Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. In this episode, I'll be sharing with you specific tips for saying no in a way that feels both natural to you, easy to you, and do it with confidence, yet is also professional. Of course, you're not going to just say no. You're going to give a more elegant and more natural response than that. But I'm going to give you several scenarios, the ones that I hear most often. Clearly there's many different types of situations you could be faced with in your professional life. And I'm just going to do a handful of examples just to cover really as many of the bases as possible today. But before we get started, I want to share with you a unique opportunity to join me for a virtual program called Acclimate to Accelerate that I'll be kicking off shortly. Now, this program, I step you through clarifying your strengths, your values, your passions, your longer-term vision for your personal and professional life. We go deep on your personal brand, and I guide you on how to use all of those elements of your success compass, how to use those elements to really guide you in a future direction, help you focus on what matters most to you, and focus on what's going to contribute to your success. And that translates to how you set goals, how you plan your time, and how you respond to what's coming at you so that what you choose to do is in alignment with what's important to you and the path that you're envisioning for yourself. So really aligns very nicely with today's episode. So to take a look at more details for that program, you can go to myownsuccesscompass.com, and there you'll see a lot more details on the program coming up. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But let's dive into why saying no is important. First, let me give you a couple of examples of, what's going through your mind about when you might say no. It might be you don't have time. It doesn't fit with your priorities. It isn't something you're really very good at. It doesn't fit with your role. It maybe belongs to another person, another group, or maybe you simply don't agree with the request itself. You actually see things very differently, so you don't want to say yes to it. So those are just a couple of really quick examples. Now, one of the most compelling reasons, there's a few, but one of them for saying no is, as a leader, it's so important for you to set an example for how to make decisions on what you will or will not say yes to. What you say yes to or what you say no to. Your team is watching you. Your boss, your colleagues, your employees, they're noticing what you say yes to and what you say no to. And if you're a person who never says no, and you never push back, I guarantee your team is wondering what that means to them. Are you agreeing to things that really don't fit with the team's mission, the team's charter? They're taking on more than they should. They may be feeling overwhelmed. Maybe they're thinking you don't have any backbone. Have you ever worked for somebody like that? It's very frustrating. Then, even worse, they feel that they can't say no because they're not seeing you do it. So they think, well, I better say yes too. I can't say no because my boss never says no. This behavior trickles down through the organization. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story. I had a client where, let's say there were 4 or 5 direct reports who were all at the VP level, and every one of them in private coaching conversations shared with me that they were feeling a tremendous amount of stress and overwhelm and frustration because their plates were overflowing. And they didn't personally feel that they could say no. So, I would work with each of them on what their situation was and where they could navigate some choices differently. Then I met with their boss, the executive vice president, and he confided in me that he was feeling stressed and overwhelmed because he didn't feel he could ever say no. All right, well, if he's the boss and he doesn't feel he can say no, that trickles down. Every one of his direct reports was feeling really overwhelmed and stressed out. So, as a leader, you want to not only for yourself, put yourself in a position where you're going to meet your commitments, hit your targets, achieve your priorities. You want to be a role model for how to navigate choices on a daily basis so that your team has a good example to follow, right? So it's not only your own personal success, but it's the success of your team. You want to model the best behavior possible so that they can take their cue from you and see it's okay to learn to say no. Now, I say learn to say no. I'm not sure in any of my responses you're actually just saying, no, not doing it. There's a more diplomatic response than that. But I'm going to go through the scenarios. So number one, you want to be a role model. But the second thing is, the higher up you go in the organization, the more emotional intelligence plays a role in your success. Something like 85% of your effectiveness is impacted by emotional intelligence. There are 15 specific skills. Now, if you want to see what the skills are, you can go to my website, donnasirianni.com, go into the resources tab, and there's a list of 15. You can download that. I also have, I think it's 7 podcast episodes where you can scroll back to prior episodes and you can see that there's episodes covering all 15. But by practicing saying no, again, with ease and confidence, a very diplomatic way, you will be strengthening several of these muscles. For example, assertiveness is one of the skills. Assertiveness means advocating for your point of view. You don't want to be passive and simply be silent and say yes to everything. Now, on the other extreme, you don't want to be an aggressive bully, but calmly in the middle is advocating for your point of view to get a better result. So assertiveness is a crucial skill for you to have. Again, the higher up you go, but it's important for everyone. Advocate for your point of view. It's a skill that can be studied and practiced and improved. It's not like, well, you're either assertive or you're not. No, you can improve. You just need to practice. Listen to episode number 11, Being an Assertive Leader. I have a whole episode on that, so you can take a look. And emotional self-awareness and emotional expression are 2 other important EQ skills, emotional intelligence. Episode 8 will give you some more details on that, because emotional self-awareness and expression are both important. Because think about it. I don't know about you, but if somebody approaches me with a request, and depending on what I'm in the middle of and how they word it and how they approach me, you might need to be very aware of your emotional and physical response, right? Do you start looking irritated, frustrated, angry, or flabbergasted, deer in the headlight? You need to have some emotional self-awareness. I know for me, there have been times when I needed to take a deep breath, tell myself, okay, put on a calm face, don't show how frustrated you are, put the poker face on, take a deep breath, just listen. Because in your head, you may be really irritated if a request is coming to you when you're flat out, you're in the middle of something, maybe you're already feeling some stress and somebody hits you up on something that, unplanned. So emotional self-awareness, or maybe the person that's approaching you, you have an allergic reaction to them. So there's lots of scenarios where you go, oh, you have to be emotionally self-aware. And then how you express yourself. What are the words you're going to say so that you are being well received? Now, then there's also empathy. Understanding the other person's perspective and point of view. So you're going to ask some questions so that you are understanding their point of view, so you understand the context for the request, why they're approaching you, before you, jump all over them, because you don't want to do that, right? But anyway, these scenarios are a great opportunity to practice strengthening those muscles, beginning with assertiveness, okay? Now, the other thing I want to say that really is the context for saying no across all these examples is that, and as I mentioned earlier about the Acclimate to Accelerate program, when I guide my coaching clients through that program, it's important that, let's take you as an example, you have something you want to be known for. You want to be someone who is good at solving complex problems. You're a change leader. You are good at coaching and developing other people. Whatever it is, there's something that you want to be known for. You want that to be the headline for your personal brand. So if other people are talking about you, they need help, they would say, oh, I know just the person. You'd be top of mind and the perfect opportunity would come to you. And it'd be something you'd want to say yes to. But for you to attract more of that, people need to see you living, breathing, and acting on that brand every day. So if they don't see you as a change leader, they're not going to come to you and say, hey, we need help on this initiative, or could you take over this initiative, or whatever. So there has to be alignment between what you bring to the table every day in your work life and what you're going to attract, and which is so important. What you say yes to and what you say no to is going to further enhance your role. Does that make sense? Right? So I'll give you some examples of what I mean by that. Let's keep going. Let's go into the first scenario, and I'm going to give you 5 scenarios to really go the ones that happen the most often. So scenario number 1, somebody makes a request of you, and you really don't have time right now, and they might want it handled right away. So for you to respond to this, my advice is for you to say, I'm fully booked this week. Can we schedule time for next week to discuss this in more detail? Would you mind going to my calendar and booking time, maybe 30 minutes for us to talk about this? Fully booked this week. Or you could say, I'm fully booked for the next few days. Could we discuss this in more detail toward the end of the week? How about on Friday? So you can propose an alternative. Now, if they say no, they can't wait that long, you may need to make a decision. Does this sound like something quick and easy or more involved? Now, on that particular point, I want to say, you have an established relationship with your colleagues, your boss, your employees, your clients. People ask you to do something that's going to be pretty quick and easy. You want to be collaborative, a team player, supportive. You might just do it really quickly. You can do it with your eyes closed. It's not hard to do. You want to be that team player in some situations. But when it's not a quick task, it's really going to disrupt your day. As a result, you might miss some commitments, or it might mean you're going to work really late tonight. There's some consequence to saying yes. Then you want to be prepared with a very genuine response that protects what you've already committed to. So here's where I want you to take your planning to a higher level and up-level your time management. It's extremely important to plan your time in advance. I suggest that you plan a week out, plan Monday through Friday, what you're going to be working on. I promise you it'll be a game changer for you. If you can have your plan, and it could just be a 1-page high-level overview of Monday through Friday of where you're going to put your time and energy. It will be a game changer for you if when you go to the office, or if you work virtually, when you fire up your laptop or whatever you do, ready to go Monday morning. It will be a game changer if you start the week Monday morning with your plan for the week already fully mapped out. Because here's what you can say with ease and confidence. Somebody has something they want you to do. It's going to take, if it's just 5 minutes, you might just do it. But let's say it's a pretty sizable conversation, a pretty sizable task, and it's really going to disrupt your day. When you say, I'm fully booked for the next week, can we discuss this in more detail next week? Could you put time on my calendar? When you say that, if you have already mapped out your week and you know that if you say yes to them, there's something you've already made a commitment on your plan that is going to get pushed out, be impacted, maybe not even get done. So are you going to miss a commitment to someone else, or is it a commitment you made to yourself? You're going to have to, in that moment, weigh what was more important. Now, here's what happens. If you haven't actually planned out your day, let's say it's an 8-hour work day, you know that you've got 3 hours of meetings, 4 hours of projects that you're going to work on. Somebody comes along with something. Looking at your plan, if it fits, if you've got time. But if you don't have a plan, you simply have a to-do list, and in your head, you're just working from the top of the list, you may not realize the impact it's going to have. Now, I will be honest with you, years ago, that was me. I would say yes too often because I didn't have a really good, concrete, well thought out plan for the day before the day started. So if you hit me in the morning with a request, I was I'm an optimist. Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, I can probably take a look. Again, we have to say it depends on how big the request is. But I probably said yes more often than I should. Then I got to the end of the day, ended up working late. And part of that was, as an optimist, I think I have time. I think I have time today, tomorrow, and the next day. But in reality, if I had had my week planned out, I would have recognized that maybe I was booked for 3 weeks and really didn't have time for this, right? But without a plan, it's very easy to be an optimist and say, Oh yeah, sure. What do you need help with? Right? But once you determine how much time it's going to take, then you need to very quickly, well, I'm fully booked. I've made commitments throughout this week. Can it wait until next week? Or I'm fully booked for a few days. Can this wait until Friday? And again, the person might say, no, I really need it now. You're going to have to use your judgment. Does this sound like something that really is an emergency? Depends on your role, right? I was senior leader for client services, client operations, and there were many instances every day when there are things of high priority that can't wait, have to be time sensitive. So you're going to have to use your judgment on that. But from a time management perspective, your goal should be to maximize your productivity, right? So to accomplish it, you want to become really skillful at managing the distractions, the disruptions, and other people's emergencies. You know that old quote of lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part? So somebody may want to make this urgent, and when you start asking a few questions, you maybe could say, this really can wait. Depending on your role, you may say, there's really very few instances that are so urgent, I have to drop what I'm doing. Now, if you want to see a visual of this, you can take a peek at a resource on my website called The Time Matrix. It's an excerpt from a book, but it's adapted from the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, and it shows the 4 quadrants. There's the one quadrant where not important, but somebody's making it urgent, right? Those are like the distractions, things that derail you. You want to be in the quadrant where it's the extraordinary productivity. It's important, but not urgent. You're being very planful in what you do. So if you want to see the visual for that, you can go into donnasirianni.com, go to resources, and look for the time matrix. It's a really valuable visual to constantly remind yourself, especially in this situation where you want to learn to say no. Now, the next scenario is someone makes a request of you and it isn't simple. It actually would be taking on a sizable project. So one of my favorite books is David Allen's Getting Things Done. And his definition of a project is if it isn't a single task, a single action, it's a project. If something requires multiple steps, it's a project. So it could be something that takes a few hours, few days, few weeks. But anyway, if it's actually taking on something sizable, you need to assess where it fits within your priorities. Now, if it doesn't align with your priorities, let's say, for example, your boss and yourself, or you with your colleagues, you've each agreed on a set of priorities for the year, for the quarter, for the month. A sizable project emerges, like this request you're getting. You'd be doing yourself and your colleagues and the organization a disservice if you don't step back and say, where does this fit? How does this align with what we've already agreed to, with the path we're on, the priorities we've established? Again, this whole episode is about when you want to say no, right? We don't need to talk about all the things you want to say yes to, but clearly in this situation, you can say, well, I've already made firm commitments on other priorities, so I don't have the time or resources to work on this. One alternative is if you could set time up with, and you could either mention your boss or another colleague or someone else, but let's see where it might fit within our plans. This could be a 3-way meeting between this person, yourself, and your boss. It could be in some organizations that I've worked in tech, we actually have committees, groups of people who make decisions about where certain kinds of projects fit within our release schedule, fit within our organization. So it really depends on what the project is. But rather than you on the fly agreeing to a project, you may need to vet it with someone, right? So you may say, well, I've already made firm commitments on other priorities, so I don't have the time or resources to work on this. My suggestion is set up time with, you either can mention a person's name or it's your boss or you and your boss to see where it might fit in within our plans. So basically, you didn't say yes. You didn't actually say no, but you said, I don't have the time or resources to work on this. That person needs to walk away and decide on their next course of action. And that is a legitimate scenario. Somebody comes to you with a project, something fairly time consuming. Now, you're going to use your common sense. If that person coming to you with the project is somebody who, based on your role, you're supposed to say yes, then I'm not talking about those kind of situations. We're talking about the discretionary situations, things that don't fit. Now, scenario number 3, someone asks you to do something that doesn't fit within your current role. Well, in that case, you need to assess the implications of taking it on. If you want to do it, okay, there may be situations you want, but if you want to say no because clearly it's part of somebody else's role, what's the implications if you do it? Are you going to be stepping on somebody else's toes? Right? Will they wonder, why is Donna doing that? She knows that I'm the one that does it. Why is she doing that? And it should have come to me. So, you could ruffle some feathers if you actually say yes, if it belongs to someone else. So you got to weigh the implications. So what you can say is, I'm not the best person to handle this request. And you say, either person A or B would be a better choice. They have the expertise for this. That is in substitute of just saying no, right? That's a form of no. I'm not the best person to handle this. Person A or B would be a better choice. They have the expertise for this. Now, saying something with ease and confidence, you're doing it very nicely because you're saying, I'm really not the best person for this. You should go see Frank or Joe or Sarah or Beth or, whoever it is. That's appropriate. Now, I've got an example. I have a client who just recently shared with me that she's being accused of not being a team player by her colleagues because she doesn't just automatically say yes to all the things that they want her to do. And they aren't in her role. They're just expecting her to do some of the, shall we say, lower level tasks. And she's a very senior person. And the rest of her colleagues are all men. This is a technology organization. And sometimes it can be men or women, will repeatedly ask somebody to do an administrative task without appearing to have an understanding of what they're doing to that person by asking them to do something like that over and over again. It's going to be time consuming. It's going to be distracting. And now if she were to say yes to all those tasks, she'd be undermining her personal brand and I'm going to say her reputation because she's just recently been promoted, given a senior role with more responsibility. If she puts herself in a position of doing too much of this sort of work that's outside her scope, others around her are going to get a false impression of what her role is, her personal brand. There's a certain way she wants to be seen. Now, she's very collaborative. She's a very positive person, very collaborative, but this is a danger of when you say yes to things over and I'm not saying she does it. That's the issue. She is firm. She is assertive, and they're trying to, you need to be a team player. You need to be able to do these tasks, but she's doing the right thing by managing her boundaries. Okay, because on the flip side, another client within a day after this shared a similar scenario of another manager, was a woman, giving her basically admin work. And there are admins in the department who could easily and happily handle the tasks. So now my client is finding herself in a situation where another manager is just constantly asking her to do things that are very administrative. Set up the meeting, but don't actually run the meeting. Maybe take the notes. A lot of administrative stuff. It's clear that these low-level tasks can be better handled by someone else. So my client needs to be assertive and share that, there are others to handle this work because she herself has been given more responsibility, higher priorities, and these tasks do not fit. They dilute and distract her time. The way something can sound, which is very negative, is, that's not my job. But you know what? The only person who's going to manage your boundaries is you. And, I know throughout my career, I've done lots of things that weren't my job, that were, somebody else could have done it, but, I did it happily, as long as it doesn't detract and end up looking to everyone else like that's what you're here for. And it's about managing your brand. So if you constantly, repeatedly say yes to things that just don't fit with your role, it can become a source of stress and conflict. So it's better to address it when the pattern first starts. So in the case of this one person, she can say to her manager and this other leader, here's what my priorities are, my role, and could we look at, how these other tasks, can be managed by the admin, want to just clarify my priorities. I mean, there can be a very practical, professional, diplomatic way to say it. I've just been given these additional projects with more responsibility and want to make sure I achieve those targets, these other tasks. This is how it's impacting my schedule. So, it's very tactful, with ease and confidence, very tactful ways to approach that. And again, this happens at all levels. I'll give you some more examples in a minute. Next scenario number 4. Let's say someone asks you to do something that doesn't fit your current role and it's your boss, right? Let's take that last scenario up a notch. Now, in neither of those cases I shared with you, did either of these clients get those assignments from their boss. It was from colleagues. But in this scenario, let's talk about when it's your boss. Okay, now this gets a little trickier. If it's a quick task, you know how to do it. It's generally easier to just do it. It really depends on what it is. But when your boss comes to you and says, hey, can you take care of this? Once in a while, yeah, sure. But if your boss is repeatedly asking you to do things outside your role, you need to step back and ask yourself, if it doesn't feel right, trust your instincts, trust your intuition. It's important to have a deeper conversation about it. For example, if your boss is giving you some complex assignments and they're really commensurate with a higher level position than what you already have, it might be a good time to have a conversation about career growth, possible advancement, promotion. Point out that you're working on these assignments and say, I'm loving it. I'm giving it 100%. And I'm curious, what advice do you have for me as I work on these challenging assignments? What advice do you have for me on how to position myself for promotion to the next level or further advancement? Just call it out, not in a negative way. Most people that I coach want those higher level positions. They're ambitious. They want the higher level assignments. But it's a good time, if it seems concerning to you, you may want to just have the conversation to find out, what are they thinking? Because for many years, I've had managers delegate tasks, projects, assignments to me that I thought they should have really handled themselves. And then it took me a while to realize either they didn't have the strengths that I had, they had different strengths, right? We're not all cookie cutter. There's things they were really good at. They saw that I had certain talents. They said, let me have Donna handle it. But I later recognized those assignments were preparing me for bigger roles. So that's good news. But if your boss is doing that and it's not apparent to you, it's good to just call it out and just have a conversation. Say, geez, I'm really excited that you've delegated this project to me. I would love to get some guidance from you on how this might position me for even more. Just could even be just a quick conversation. Now, on the other hand, if your boss is giving you menial tasks that are taking a significant amount of time, it's giving the impression to others that this is what your role is. Again, you need to have a conversation. So if you're seeing yourself as a leader, managing meetings, facilitating conversations, playing a bigger role in certain forums, but your boss is having you schedule the meeting, take the minutes, prepare the handouts, and you're starting to feel not as respected as you'd like to be. That's a red flag. Trust your instincts and have a conversation. And what you can say is, I'd like to make a bigger contribution to the organization. And in the past, you've been having me do X, Y, Z, but I am really eager to do much more than that. What's the opportunity for me to take a bigger role in those meetings, on that project, or with that client? And you're not saying it in a way that's stirring up conflict. You're just saying, this is what's been happening, and I'd like to make a bigger contribution. What advice do you have for me, or what are some opportunities for me to step up and actually take on much more than that? I want people to see and realize that I'm actually really good at these strengths. I'm good at organizing the team, facilitating decision-making, or whatever it is, right? So you want to call that out. Don't just sit and stew about it. You need to have a conversation. And it's in the spirit of, I want to do more, and I have the capability to do more. So what are the opportunities, and what advice do you have? Okay. Probably every boss I've ever had has asked me to do things that weren't exactly my role. But if I thought I could do a good job, I actually enjoyed doing it, or it was quick, it really doesn't matter. But I would always connect the dots between the task and say, you know what, that makes sense that he or she is giving me that because, you know what, that plays to my strengths. But when you're not good at it, it's actually something is not a strong point. And that's true for any of these scenarios. Somebody asks you, even your boss, to take on something and you know it's a weakness for you, that you're not going to shine. You're not doing them a favor if you handle it. Because if you really aren't very good at it, the results are not going to be as positive as you would like or they would like. It's not good for the organization. So in those situations, you can say, you know, I'm really not the best person to handle this. It requires someone who can do A, B, and C. And quite honestly, I think you'd get better results if you had somebody who actually was good at those things, and maybe you recommend, person A or B could do it. So if it doesn't play to your strengths, and it's something of consequence, right? There's lots of little tasks that we just absorb. But if it's something that it doesn't play to your strengths, you are going to be really stressed out because you're not good at it, then you're not doing yourself a favor or your boss or whoever it is a favor by just saying yes and feeling like you can't say no. Because now you're setting both of you up for disappointment. But instead of just saying, well, I'm not very good at this, can't you find somebody else? That's not really very constructive. Instead, it's, this assignment really requires somebody to have in-depth knowledge of this product and then the ability to quantify and do this. And quite honestly, I don't think I'm the best person for that, but I know that this other person has those skills and is really good at this. They would give you a better result. They could achieve this much more efficiently for you than I could. Right? Do you see how, wow, I'm wording that differently because it's in support of the person you're speaking with and you've given them a good suggestion instead of just saying, hey, that's not my job. I'm not good at that. But it's with ease and confidence. Now, the last scenario number 5 is you actually don't agree with the request at all. You see things differently and you want to say no. And I have certainly had that. I'm sure you have. We get those situations all the time. Now, just to give you something to read that will be really interesting as a leader is I highly recommend a Harvard Business Review article entitled Culture of Candor. Now, you as a leader can be a role model and set the tone for your team and within your organization by practicing what's discussed in this article. And this article, I read it many years ago, but I've used it many times and it's just fabulous because there's a price we pay. As a leader, if you don't foster a culture of candor, people won't want to say no to you, be honest with you, tell you when you're heading for a cliff, tell you that there's another way to do it, that there's some trade-offs, some problems that you might not see. You might have a blind spot and they're going to point something out to you that you really need to hear. It's going to help you get a better result with the client, with the organization, whatever it is. So you want to be good at expressing your point of view in a professional, diplomatic, and confident way. So as a leader, you want to be open to hearing other points of view. And an employee wants to model that same behavior. But in this situation, you need to model it and practice it. Now, in some cases, you have a situation, you've been given a request from someone, you see things differently. Now, this person could be your boss, a peer, a colleague, it may even be a client, but let's keep it internal for now. Any situation like that, it's a perfect opportunity to practice your assertiveness skills. And you want to advocate for your point of view. And you want to learn to articulate it in a way that still honors what that other person's trying to do. So let's assume that whatever this thing is, it fits within your role, it aligns with your priorities, but you just don't agree with it. So first, you may want to state the shared goal. It could be something like, yes, I can see that request, that project, really aligns nicely with our priority for this year of increasing engagement. I can see that. But I have some questions for you. I'd like to know what's important to you about taking this approach. What are your objectives? What are your concerns? You're stating a shared goal to say the two of you are on the same page. You both have this goal in common. You both have this priority. But then you're asking the other person, you're trying to get more insight into what is going on in their mind. You want to listen before you express your point of view. And you really want to listen genuinely. What's important to them about the approach? What are their objectives? What are their concerns? And after you've heard them, acknowledge that you heard them. You can say, well, I understand. Yes, I completely understand your point of view. I can see that you're committed to doing this, right? Fill in the details. I have some thoughts I'd like to share with you on this. I have some other ideas of how we could go about this. And you share your point of view. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, when you do this, you don't agree with their request. You see things differently. You're now entering into a bit of a negotiation. And at the end of it, I'm assuming you're going to say no to what they've asked because you see things differently and you don't agree with it. Somebody asks me to do something and I simply don't agree. And I think it's going to be really negative for me, for my team, for the organization. I'm not going to, after 3 seconds, cave in and go, oh, okay, and throw my values, ethics, morals, integrity out the window. So it starts getting into a negotiation. But let me tell you a quick story. I had a boss who had a personal pet project where he wanted to make a name for himself and be out in front on something that had kind of a marketing objective to it, but we were an internal client services organization, so it didn't really fit for us. We took some baby steps. He was really irritated. We weren't going far enough, and he insisted that we make it a higher priority. Now, in the spirit of culture of candor, I completely disagreed with him and thought that this was going to really detract from the higher priorities we already had established. So I initiated, and I worked for him, I initiated a priority setting conversation with him and my colleagues. And as a team, we came up with a list of our 25 priorities, rank ordered in terms of priority. And the thing he was asking for ended up at number 25. And we never talked about it again. So that was my very tactful way of dealing with that. Another quick story, when I was in Asia, I had a senior leader who wanted to approach a hiring situation in a certain way, and I was the actual hiring manager, and he was pretty assertive, and he wanted to do it his way, and I didn't agree. I thought his way was riddled with problems. He only wanted to hire people who were friends of his, and that was not how we did our hiring process. And so I basically said no, that the hire that we were going to make would be somebody who the team felt had the best technical skills and level of professionalism and industry relevant experience. And the final recommendation that I got from the team, that I would make that decision. And I basically said, I felt that was the best way to handle it. So there are times when you're going to put your foot down and be assertive and say no to a request, because you know that the consequence is living with the repercussions, the damage that will be done if you say yes to something that in your heart you know is absolutely not the right thing to do. Okay, so you owe it to yourself and your team to strengthen this muscle, right? The assertiveness muscle, while still having empathy of, I understand that as a senior leader, you want to have a say. I'm happy to interview your candidates. The team will interview them. I think it's fantastic. You've got some great connections. But in the end of the day, the process we're going to follow is the team will make their recommendation. I will weigh that strongly, and then I'll make the recommendation. So you still want to honor, respect, and listen, and be very respectful of the person's point of view. So that's it. So those are the 5 scenarios. There's so many stories, so many things we want to say no to. But again, in the spirit of getting your best results, getting the best results for your organization and for your team, these muscles that we've been talking about in this episode are crucial for you to strengthen through practice every day. Now, these 5 scenarios may not be the ones on your mind, so I encourage you to, right now, as you get off this podcast episode, think about something right now that you want to say no to, but you're not sure how. Script it out. Just put it on a piece of paper or on your laptop, type out, given the tools that I've shared with you today, what could you say that would honor the other person and be an appropriate way to say no with ease and confidence? Script it out, start practicing. Because now, I would say after practicing and practicing, I really have no problem with it today, but I know many years ago I did. I said yes and overcommitted a lot because I wanted to please people and I was an optimist, so I thought I had time, and it really took a long time for me to get out of those habits. So anyway, I hope for today you've gotten some really good tips. I hope you start strengthening in areas that you know are going to serve you. So in closing, I want to share with you, again, I have that virtual program starting very shortly, and it's going to help you go deeper on gaining the clarity around where you should put your time, energy, and focus, increase your self-confidence, understand how your personal brand is shaped by the choices you make, adopt new habits for planning your time, and much more. So simply click on myownsuccesscompass.com for more details. And with that, I want to thank you for listening and have a great day.